We're going to want to solder this from the bottom up, and in my case left to right because I'm right-handed. But however, if you're left-handed, you're going to want to solder this from right to left. The reason for that is so that you don't burn the insulators as you're going across each contact. So let's get started. The bottom contacts on this job are always harder to solder than the upper contacts, for the reason that the spacing, or the clearance if you will, is much less than it is at the top. So you might have to reflow these pins a few times to get it the way you want it. If you're using heat shrink on this job, you're going to want to recover these in the same sense from bottom up. So with each row that you go up, you'll have to take time to recover these heat shrinks, or at least slide them into position. We're on the second row. You might want to get yourself a pair of needle nose pliers or something you'll be able to manipulate this cord with so that you can bend it into the contact. Another thing is, don't forget to put a heat shrink on, or else you're going to have to do it over again. And the reason you'll have to slide each one of these heat shrinks up as you go is also, depending on the way you're soldering it, the pinout never matches the way the cords are laid out. So if you don't slide each one up as you recover, then you're going to wind up with a braid in the end, and it'll be a lot harder to get your heat shrinks around the contacts, trying to weave them in and out of each other. If you have to, just bend any of the other leads that are in your way out of the way for now, and pull the contact you need through. Now is when the soldering from left to right really becomes important. You're beyond the first three because they're a little diagonal, but these are all in a row. So. I would also recommend using a really small gauge solder in this case, just so that if you're applying liquid flux, you'll be able to get it on the contact without hitting anything else. You might even need to use a solder sucker in certain cases, or a desoldering braid if you're good with that. But if one of these contacts short out, it becomes very tricky to remove the solder from it. Okay, so now that we've soldered the bottom half of this connector, we're going to take the time to recover the heat shrinks. And we would have to do this now because if you solder each contact, it would be a little tricky to get them all shrunk properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to rotate this connector at a distance, maybe 3 inches from the base. And that way the heat will be spread evenly and everything will shrink properly. Then we're going to go back to soldering the top half of this connector. And this will go a little bit quicker than the first time, only because there's not as much in your way now. Okay, so now that we're done the final steps of the connector, we're just going to recover the heat shrink one last time, the top half that is. And just remember to stay about 3 inches above where the heat's coming from, and keep rotating so that everything shrinks evenly. And I think that's pretty much it.